As your corporate insurance partners, we are excited to bring you on this important session on stress management at the workplace. In today's fast paced environment, managing stress is crucial for maintaining both mental well being and productivity. Today's session is going to be led by Ms. Riddhi Gandhi. She is a dedicated mental health therapist with over 4 years of experience in the field. She specializes in clinical and counseling psychology, holds a master's degree from Bangalore University and a postgraduate diploma from the Xavier's Institute of Counseling Psychology. So, Riddhi will help us understand stress, recognize stress signs, and she will explain a few stress management techniques. Guys, this session is going to be lasting for around 40 minutes, and after that, we will have a short Q&A session. So in case anybody has a question, you can raise your hand, we can unmute those people, or you can put your query in the chat and we can get that addressed. We hope this webinar provides you with valuable insights and practical tools to better navigate workplace challenges. So let's get started for today's webinar. Over to you, Riddhi.
Hello everyone. Thank you for joining in and thank you for such a warm welcome. So I think as ma'am already did mention that today what we are going to cover is stress, and I think that is something that in our day-to-day life all of us have gone through, and it's very difficult for us to say that, oh, I'm not going to feel stressed, or I can do something where I'm not going to be stressed at all. So today our session majorly would be focusing on understanding what stress is and how do we recognize these signs of stress a little earlier so that we are able to manage and work on it in a better manner, which is not just helpful for us in our day-to-day life maintaining our mental health, but also at the same time affecting our day-to-day functioning, our work, our productivity, our job performance at large as well, right? So for today's session, I would be requesting y'all as well, if possible, if there are certain questions, you can put it in the chat box. And to and fro, we would be discussing a few things. So whenever you feel like answering and discussing, you can feel free to do that in the chat box as well, right? So before we start, just allow me a minute to share my screen. So we'll do a small check-in before we dive into it. And I just wanted to understand from y'all, how are y'all doing today? Since we come towards the end of the week, so small check-in. You can put it in the chat box how you're feeling. You can put down the words, or if you've joined through your phone, you can also put down your some emotions, emojis to express how you're feeling right now. It does not have to be restricted to the words that you see on the screen. If there are certain other things, other feelings which are coming up for you, you can of course share that bit as well. These are just some prompts for you to connect and see if something that you're able to resonate with you. Don't have to be shy, it's fine. However you're feeling, it's okay. Excited? Okay. Creative? Delighted? Others, would you like to share? You can also use emojis to express if you feel words are not possible. Yeah. Happy. It could also be tired, stressed, as we are discussing today, annoyed. Just neutral, I'm not feeling anything much. That's also fine. And even if you don't feel like sharing, that's completely fine. You can utilize this time to actually take a pause to check in and to understand how we are doing right here, right now as well. Right? So as we move ahead through the course of the activities and the session today, something that I would of course, ask you all to do is keep on reflecting. And if you can share on the screen and with us, that's great. But if not, I understand sometimes things can be too personal as well. but do reflect and take this time out for that. Yeah, we also have joyful here. Okay, so I think before we dive into understanding what stress is, I want to understand from you all that what does mental health mean to you all? Can I discuss about mental health? What does it mean for you all? Anyone who would like to answer?
Just a second, Riddhi. Hirin, I think people are not able to put their query in the chat. Just look into it. Guys, you can raise your hand in case you have any question. We will unmute you. Or you can put it in the Q&A. Yeah, Riddhi, you can start. Whatever comes, I'll read it out to you.
Right, not an issue. Yeah. Right. So as I was mentioning, has anyone mentioned what does mental health mean for them? And okay. So I think mental health, generally, when we look at it, it's similar to this onion which is there on your screen. We all of us have layers and layers to it. Um, it happens on a spectrum where on one fine day it wouldn't be that okay I'm feeling great, and the next day all of a sudden I feel that my mental health is deteriorating. There are multiple factors which combine together, some stresses that I might be experiencing, the support system that I might have, the job that I am in, the relationship that I am in, different areas of my life which comes together to plays a role in understanding where my mental health is there in the moment. And amongst that, one such layer of onion is our stress. Right. So, what are the stressors that are there in our life? Are also these multiple layers which are there, right? And I also see that the chat has been enabled. So, if you all want, you can keep adding here. So far, before I move ahead, just if you had any questions that you want me to answer.
Manvendra has mentioned your ability to focus on the work you have planned to do when you ask what stress is.
Right. Okay. So, what is your concentration level? Agree. Yeah. What else? So I think as we are discussing about this important layer of stress, before I dive into it, I want to understand from your, understanding that what do you see stress as and how do you feel stressed?
Uh, Ms. Riddhi, can you be a little loud? Because I don't think others are able to hear you too well.
Okay. Am I audible? Is this fine?
It's clear for me, but
Right.
you can just attempt to be a little more loud.
Yeah, I'll try to be a little louder.
Karamveer is writing, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, as we were discussing that, what from your end, what do you understand by the word stress? Because I think you, me, all of us in our day-to-day life, we tend to use this quite often. Oh, I'm feeling too stressed today, the day is really stressful. But what does this word stress mean to you all? Mhm. Anyone?
You can put in your comments in the chat. What
Yeah.
does stress mean to you?
You can think over it and we will be discussing as well. Okay, when you're feeling low, upset about certain things, yes. That is how emotionally we do feel stressed as well. I think as we are saying, stress, as we were discussing, stress is a very natural human response to any situation, any incident, any event or a thought which is really overwhelming for us. Anything beyond our capacity to cope adds to the feeling of stress for us. In our day to day life, especially in this modern society, we are constantly overstimulated. There is something or other happening simultaneously for us, right? Either there's something continuously on our mail, there are mails are popping up on WhatsApp, on different apps, there are certain requirements, needs, which are coming up for us. And because of which we are continuously in that mode of rushing and running and, I need to get this done, and we are constantly very stimulated. So there are certain capacity that we hold to deal with us. Each one of us have their own threshold to deal at a given point. However, If any stressors goes beyond that, beyond our capacity to deal with it and cope with it, we experience a feeling of stress. Stress is not just restricted to our mind, but we also experience stress in our body. In our body, in terms of a lot of time when we are stressed and tired, end of the day we might be experiencing, oh, my back is hurting really bad, my shoulders are aching, my neck is so stiff, stiff, my head is aching. All of these are just signs to also know that stress gets stored into our body as well. And it's not just restricted to how you're feeling and your ability to concentrate as well. So there is an overdose of everything. However, when that stressor becomes an overdose and over a period of time, which might be very difficult, we might even reach to a level of burnout. And that is why we are focusing here, so that we are able to recognize the earlier signs of stress, and thus we are able to prevent and manage through that. Right. I'm just going to read through very quickly some messages that we have before we move to the next slide. Yeah. So I think Dharamveer is mentioning when, there are a lot, when a lot of needs to be done and I have less time to do that. Yeah. And that is how you describe, yeah, we know there's so much on my plate and, I have tight deadlines to get over that. That definitely can lead to the feeling of stress. Rohini is mentioning that stress for me is when I have tons of work at my table and the day becomes shorter. It's like 24 hours is not enough, yes. And often that leads to feeling of panic, feeling of anxiety creeping into all of us. Most definitely, yeah. So I think, yeah, since we are discussing stress, there are few signs and symptoms that are mentioned here. I want to see of these signs which are there, how many of it are you able to recognize and connect with? Oh, this is something that even I'm experiencing, or I've experienced this when I'm stressed. You can unmute yourself and share, or also put it in the chat box and point out which one you are able to connect with. And in the meantime, I'll also run through it. So, as we were discussing, stress is not something that we experience only at our emotional level. We also experience stress at a cognitive level, we experience it at a physical level as well. So, in terms of our emotional level, how it may look like is a lot of mood swings, sometimes irritability. We might feel very annoyed. Sometimes we might get angry very quickly. On other days, I would be really okay with some deadlines getting pushed. But today, I'm feeling so stressed that I might just get snappy very quickly. That could be some signs of stress at an emotional level as well. At a physiological level, it may look like in terms of I'm sweating, I'm having some headaches, some difficulty breathing, my heart might be palpitating too much during that time, nail biting. All of these are some signs of, physiologically how we experience stress as well. Sometimes changes in our sleep, our disturbed sleep, all of these are signs of physiological form of stress. And at a cognitive level, what we also experience, maybe as you one of you have mentioned, constant worrying. We're always into what if thoughts which are happening. What if this happens? What if this happens? Will I be able to complete my work? What if there are certain deadlines which I miss out? What will happen then? How will the client react? How will my manager react? So there are constant worrying that would happen, which might also lead to behavioral things of, for example, us procrastinating, sometimes just losing motivation. We might end up making a lot of mistakes because we are so stressed. So these are some signs and symptoms of stress, right? So while we have discussed few signs and symptoms, I want to keep it open to you all to put it down in the chat box. What are some signs that you experience when you're feeling stressed? Now we have Suresh mentioning that there's constant worrying for him. Yeah, disturbed sleep. What else? Yeah. I can personally share for me, it's sometimes, disturbed sleep is my first go-to. That whenever I recognize how I'm feeling stressed is when my sleep gets affected. So a lot of time these markers are very important for us to also recognize that we may not know we are in those stages of burnout and those stages of excessive stress, and we may miss out on these signs. Right. Okay. So Dharamveer is mentioning irritability, mood swings, loss of motivation, disturbed sleep, getting angry, rushing things, difficulty concentration. Yes, a lot of this happen. Loss of motivation. Yes. Karamveer is again mentioning your thinking power is also disturbed. Most definitely. Your ability sometimes to make certain decisions, problem solving, how we are dealing with conflict, also tends to get affected when we are stressed. And that is why it's really important for us to manage our stress, because in our day to day life, we are always, in a space where we might have to make certain decisions. We might have to solve problems, certain problems which are there on our plate, right? Jagan is mentioning about rushing things. Yes. So these are certain signs that we are experiencing on a day-to-day basis, and it's not just one, but all of us might be experiencing that. Dharanveer is also mentioning like constant worrying. Most definitely. So I think as we are recognizing the signs and symptoms, let's just dive very quickly to understand these signs and symptoms does not occur in a day, or just one fine day it's happening. These stress occurs, as we are discussing, as on a continuum that happens over a period of time. So initially, as we discuss it, as it's a honeymoon stage, what happens during that time? This is the time where maybe there are a lot of responsibilities on my plate, but I do feel that I'm excited about it. I will feel I have enough energy, enough, threshold to cope with this responsibilities that I have on my plate, and I would be happy about it. And till the time we are in this stage, it's all green. None of the, responsibilities feel too much for us. Moving to the next stage is the onset of the stress. What happens in the on stress of the stress is, when those responsibilities, when I feel it's moves, there is a shift from, I think I was excited about this on being at my plate, but now I feel that it's just too much. The moment we start experiencing that, we might start having smaller signs of stress that maybe, as we're discussing, sleep might getting affected. So this is when all the signs that we were discussing, gradually it starts to come up. It might not happen that all of a sudden all the signs might be coming up. Depending on each one of us, few signs might start popping up. And from there, if the stress is not resolved or it's not coped with, the intensity may keep on increasing. And thus, the multiple domains of stress is something that we may start experiencing as well. So from the onset of this, that then we move to the chronic stage. That is when we are still feeling too much is on my plate, I can't handle. That is when I might start getting angry too often. I might be very irritable. I might start fighting with people, or I might, lash out on people. That is my stage of chronic stress. From there, we go to this orangish and red phase, which is if right now still I've not prevented stress, or till now I've not, sort of managed stress, it might reach to early stages of burnout where gradually my capacity to deal with it is reducing. So even after I'm taking breaks, even after I'm getting proper sleep, next day when I'm waking up, I'm still feeling tired. Yeah? Okay, I'll try to slow down for you. Okay? So that is when we reach to the second last stage of burnout. And the very last one is the habitual burnout, that which is a chronic stage of burnout for all of us. Okay? Okay. And the chronic stage of burnout is where we would require complete pause to then take a complete relaxation time to come back to our earlier stage. And that is when it becomes a very critical stage. So what I would want you all to do is take a minute to reflect from these stages. Where do you think you are? Are you in the green space? If you don't want to add up in terms of the numbers or the stages name, you can also put down the colors where you feel more connected to. And while you reflect, I'm also reading out what Suraj has mentioned is, for youngers, when we are working at a corporate, we think our personal life is affected because of less time or late working at office, what to do and how to balance that. I think we would be covering very bits of that in the coming part as well as the work-life balance part. Right? And we would be covering very shortly that as well. Yeah. Would you all want to share which stage, if you feel that you are stressed right now, do you think you are somewhere in the green space, somewhere between green and yellow? No? So it's okay for us to reflect and check in with ourselves. Where do I see myself? And that becomes really important to check in as when, if I'm recognizing that maybe if I'm in the yellow stage, that means I have to now start very mindfully to prevent and cope with stress so that I don't reach to this level of orange or red. And that is why it becomes very important for us to check in. And if you realize if you're already in the stage of orange, we'll have to take immediate steps to, work and manage through that so that we don't reach to the stage of red. right? And thus it becomes really important for us to have this check-in, right? So as we do that, um, I just want you to take this time also, as we were discussing, that stress may happen for each one of us for different reasons. I've just added few reasons here, not restricted to it, but let's understand and see what are certain areas that makes me feel a lot of stress. I've added some, workplace stresses that might apply to you, not necessarily, but if there is anything which is applying, you can put it down. So as I think Suraj was just mentioning that, balancing and work and personal life can be a stressor for us. So similarly, you can also put it down that if anything from your you feel it applies to you. And if there are any stresses that you think are not mentioned here, but you are able to recognize, you can put it down in the chat box or unmute and share with us as well. So you can also unmute. Yeah, take a minute. I'll wait on this slide. High workload, yes. Constant interruptions, okay. Dharamveer is mentioning tight deadlines, unrealistic expectations, constant interruptions, communication breakdowns, unclear job roles and responsibilities. Okay, lack of recognition and achievements, lack of clarity in instructions. These are few factors which might add stresses to you. Yeah. Okay. So as we were discussing and reflecting on it, okay, we recognized that okay, these might be certain sources of stresses for me, but now what can we do about it? I've understood what stress would look like. I've understood certain signs and symptoms that apply to me when I'm feeling stressed. At the same time, it's also important to now know that once I'm feeling stress and I'm able to, recognize it, what can I do about it? Yes. I think Suraj is also mentioning mostly deadlines of any work, right? Okay. Right. So now before we start, I just have a question. If you could answer in a yes or a no, that would be great. Do you think a culture of support now, as we are discussing all these, work related concerns and stressors, do you think a culture of support can help you deal with this stress better? You can just put a yes or no, that would also work. Right. I think Balwant is also mentioning that if there is so much stress both in our personal and our professional life, how can we, resolve that? As we are moving ahead, we are going to discussing some strategies that might help us to prevent the stresses of our life. Yes, Karamveer is mentioning, yes, at most of the point, we would require this culture, a support as a team for each other to also help us deal with stress. What does others think? Like, does anyone think that, no, I don't think so, that, as a team, we can do anything? It's morely what I have to do, and that's also fine. We are just right now trying to understand each other's opinion as well, that, what do we feel about it? So I think as Karamveer did mention that, and I would also somewhere, yeah, and Dharamveer is also mentioning, I would also agree to that, that yes, sometimes the culture and how as a team we can support each other can also help us to deal and cope with stress a little better. So what we are going to do is in the next few slides, we're going to understand as a team how we can help each other out as well. For a few things that we can do, which can be very helpful for us. Karamveer and Dharamveer, as you had mentioned, yes, I wanted to understand from you all any pointers that is, you can think how does this culture of support can be created. What are few things that you feel can help to, cope with stressors as a team? And others also you can feel free to add if you have any thoughts around it. Okay. So few things. One, most definitely to what we can do is have an open dialogue. So when we say open dialogue, that means whenever we are feeling stressed, it is important for us to be able to create an environment where we are able to openly discuss about it, about our stress, about it, at our workload that we currently have, and of course, not just restricted to that, but also send feedback to each other. So as a team, for example, you feel there is so much on my plate. What can I do? You can discuss it with your team members that okay, this is something I'm feeling, and as a way of just venting it out as well. But it could be also a way so that maybe if you are openly discussing out loud, there might be few team members who can also say, okay, if you feel there's too much on my plate, let's just collaborate and make it happen. You can also discuss it with your manager for that matter as well, so that they also know how well you are able to deal with it. If you need any kind of support, in what way can they offer the support to you as well. So it's not just about having an open discussion, but also seeking that feedback. You are letting them know, okay, this is something I'm experiencing, but also from them, you can take certain feedback to understand if there is something you can do better to manage your day as well. And this also helps us to build a very trusting and a very nurturing professional relationship as well, where we are being very authentic and open about how we are feeling with each other. If there are some, right. Yes, I think Dharamveer is mentioning, connecting to this point, is that more interaction with the team members, managers who can actually understand what to do and what you have in your day to day life as well. So, the task list that you are having, and if you are sharing it with your manager, that okay, there is already so much on my plate. Is there something that can be done maybe later on? Can I prioritize something which is on my plate a little later to take up this part as well? So, when you are having open discussion, you can also come to the next part, that is a collaborative form of problem solving. So this is not something that you have to deal necessarily with yourself. You can, when you communicate very clearly and openly, you're also creating a space where you can sit together and discuss, okay, what are the problems that we are experiencing, and how do we come to a middle ground, or how do we solve that out as well, so that we can sit together, we can come up with a team-based solutions. So if there are certain, maybe changes which are happening at an organization level, and as a team you're experiencing a lot of changes in that dynamic, or now what to do. So you come together as a team, or there's a project that you have laid on as a team, and you realize a lot of a lot of requirements from this project which is coming in. So you sit together and you create, you streamline, you create certain protocols that okay, for this project maybe we need to do something differently. So when you come together, when you brainstorm different strategies, that can also help you to manage your workload a little better, right? So these are few things: engaging into collaboratively into problem solving, having open discussion. Along with that, also, right, having clear boundaries, building peer support systems as well. So I think having clear boundary, just connecting this to what Suresh had also mentioning earlier, Suraj was also mentioning earlier. How do I balance my work life? Sometimes having those clear boundaries can also help you to manage it better. So having clear, roles and expectation defined for your, okay, these are my rules, and under these, what are the few things that I have to do, so that we know this is something I have to do it at a priority. And as other tasks which might come up, I can still do that, but there is an understanding of how much priority that I have to give to those tasks as well. So at the same time, clear boundaries would also mean that we are respecting our personal time. At the same time, we are also respecting our workload and limits to that. That I know if this is to this, I have to focus on my work, then I'll be putting those are into my work. So having those clear boundaries, practicing assertion is also another way of saying that okay, there are times where you have to say no to your personal things, but there are times where you might have to say no to your professional space as well. If you already have 10 things on your list, to-do list, today is the 11th one coming in, how much ever you try, you might not have the energy to do that 11th one. If you don't communicate, if you don't tell, and you just keep it to yourself, your manager, your supervisor may also not know okay, what's there on your plate. So in this situation, through open communication, letting them know where you are at, what problem that you might be experiencing, and then assertively also utilizing, okay, maybe this is something that I cannot do today, but tomorrow first thing I'll do it and let you know. Or that because there are 10 things and this is the 11th thing, if you think this is more important, maybe I can push something from this list, existing list, to the next day. So this is also some way that you can put assertion. It could also look like that, okay, maybe I'm okay with taking this up, but can we push the deadline to tomorrow? Or I'm okay taking this up, however, can I collaborate it with another team member of mine? So these are few ways in which also you can practice your assertion in the team as well and in your workspace, right? And for that, we're also utilizing all the skills that we discussed in the previous slide as well. And at last, there are times where even after practicing all of these skills that we discussed, there are certain situational factors, certain environmental factors which might be out of our control. Where how much ever we try, there is not anything that we could do to maybe modify the situation. Times like this, having a peer support groups where you can actually have, a group where you're not just talking about work, maybe. There are certain times you're just discussing of other things where you're chit-chatting. And so having those informal relationship can also be helpful to deal with stress in our day-to-day life. Right, so you can have a mutual support system where you're coming together and you're just discussing about the workload. How are you managing with stress? That can also be a way of, sort of getting inspiration from other. Okay, this is something they're doing that's really working out for them. Maybe it could work out for me as well. So offering mutual support, encouragement to each other, discussing, venting out to each other can also help to build that morale and help us manage our stress a little better. Sometimes implementing some buddy system that, okay, any task that I have to do, I can do it with this particular person. So we are doing it as a company and I'm not very feeling very isolated and alone while I'm doing this task. So these are few ways and few strategies in which we can work at a very collaborative level and to create this culture of support into our workplace, which can be helpful for us to deal with stress. However, the stress is not something, this is one way, of course, as a culture and bringing this change at a macro level is something we can do. However, stress management is not just restricted to that. A lot of our stress management is also individually what I can do to deal with it. Right? So I'm going to now, depending as we were discussing, there are different domains of stressors and the signs that it comes up. So dealing and managing with those stress also follow up through those signs. Right? So I'm going to just orient you to different ways, different techniques through which you can manage your stress a little better. Right? So, very first part, as we discussed, stress is not just something which is at an emotional level or at a cognitive level for us. Stress is something that we also experience at a physiological level as well. So, few things that can help us to deal with stress a little better would be engaging into various breathing exercise. Right? I have a very short 30 seconds breathing exercise for you all. If you're comfortable, let's do that. For this, I would request all of you all, this is known as a triangular breathing. So for this, what I would want you all to just take a minute, sit straight, and if possible, to close your eyes. As you see the triangle here, we are going to do 3 steps here. On my count, gradually, you have to just make this triangle shape of inhale, then another side of the triangle where we are holding our breath, and the third side of the triangle where we are exhaling. So this is just for us to also in our brain, if you're not using a finger, as you close your eyes. And as I say, inhale, hold, and exhale, you can imagine this triangle in your mind as well. Right? So let's take 30 seconds right now to actually experience this breathing technique with us. Right? So you can just close your eyes and take a normal deep breath in. And out. So as you breathe in, take a deep breath in, inhale, hold your breath, and exhale. And you can exhale it through your mouth. Inhale. You can also do counting along with it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And lastly, you can also exhale. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is, I know, as Balwant is mentioning, in a busy life, we might not have much time for this, and that is why I mentioned 30 seconds. So these are few activities that you might not have much time to do it, but you can actually do it just while you're working. There's too much on your plate. 30-second close your eyes and do multiple rounds of this and then get back. You can also do this some like deep breathing. Just keep your hands on your stomach and just engage into deep breathing in and out as you're sitting. So all of these activities that I'm going to now discuss are something you can do it in a very short period of time as well, right? So that is one part of it, that is breathing. Second, as we were discussing, a lot of time stress can also come from lack of time management. So how we are managing and how we are prioritizing our time can also be helpful. One small technique that I'm sure most of you might be knowing, but a lot of time we just know about it and we'll keep it away. Today, I'm going to bring this technique again for you all so that we can also now start practicing. As we are mentioning, like when I have to do a work, one part of stress that we observe is that I'm not able to concentrate. There's just so much on my plate. What do I focus? And I feel really overwhelmed. Times like these techniques can be really helpful. Is I'm prioritizing and focusing. I'm taking one task at a time so that when I know that I'm just for the next 25 minutes to 30 minutes, I'm going to just focus on this one task and get it over and done with. So, what would this task look like? First, we are selecting one single task to focus on. Then, we're going to set a timer and start working continuously for the next 25 minutes. After the 25 minutes, we can take a 5 minutes break. For that, you can just reflect and you can just move around a little. You can take a water break, you can take a tea break, you can go around and maybe just relax, look outside the window. Small things that you can do in this 5 minutes of the break. And depending on the task that you have, if it's a longer task, you can repeat this for next 2 rounds, 3 rounds, 4 rounds. If it's a shorter round, you can just do it one more time and get it over. Right? Or if it's just a 25-minute task, then you can take a pause here as well. You focus on the task, do it for the 25 minutes, take a break, and you're done with the task. You move to the next task. So, depending on the intensity of your task, how long duration does it take, you can make this happen. So, if it's a long task, you can repeat this again like task, 25 minutes, take a break, continue with the task if it requires. Again, do it for 25 minutes, take a break. You can do this 25 minutes, 5 minutes of break at a large for 4 rounds, then take a longer break because that would be required because we've been doing this for almost 2 hours now. Then take a 30 minutes of break, and if needed, then you can come back and do this again. So, this helps us to sort of prioritize what is important, where do I focus, and what do I do. So, this is one technique that you can follow. Aside from that, a lot of time, I think since beginning I've been mentioning you prioritize. But how do we prioritize? There's so much on my plate. What do I do? This is a small technique that you can do to prioritize. Is it's a Eisenhower, decision making. That okay, I have 10 things on my plate. Of these 10 things, what are the things which are very important and urgent for me? If it's really important and urgent, you do it here and now. If this is something which is not urgent, but it is important enough, you decide a time, if not right here, right now, when do I need to do it? Do I need to do it by end of the day? Do I need to do it by tomorrow first half? You divide it. Just checking in. Is my voice clear? Balwant is mentioning he can't hear me, so I'm just checking in.
It's clear for me, Riddhi.
Okay, yeah, right. As we are mentioning, the next two part and the third part is okay. It is urgent enough, but not important. What do I do? Can I delegate it to someone else? Can I ask someone to do it on my behalf here? So that is one. And the last part would be it's not urgent, not important. We are deleting the task. It does not have to be on my checklist and my to do list. I'm sure a lot of us might have a long list of to dos that we would have to do today. I would actually request all of you all to later on just sit with. I might this might take 5 minutes. Just sit with it, and you can maybe categorize your task into this and try this out. That if it's working for you, you can try it out for a day. See if it's working. Then maybe this could be your weekly thing, your daily thing as well. That you can take it out, right? And as we are discussing, okay, one physiologically what I can do, one time management what I can do. At the same time, a lot of our stressor also comes from a thought level, where we are continuously thinking maybe things about our past, something about our future, something which may not be in our control. And we end up worrying so much about that we lose this focus and clarity of what we can do in the moment. So something if you're worrying about certain things that, oh, if I'm doing this project, what is my manager going to say? If I'm sending it across to the client, will my client like it? Will they not like it? Do I need to do something differently? You're continuously thinking about something which is about the future, something which is not in my control. I can focus then, shift my focus on things which are in my control. So what are the things which are there in my control? Okay, I can be very clear about, okay, what are the requirements of the task? While I'm doing the task, am I making sure that all those requirements are met or not? I can cross check it once to make sure there are no mistakes done. How I'm managing my time, what kind of efforts that I'm putting, am I following the rules, not following the rules, how I'm taking proper breaks. All of these things are in my control. So what we can also do, one technique here is understanding what is in my control and what is not in my control. Right? So these are few things that you can try out to also help us, decide what is there in our control and what is not. So anything which is outside our control, we can try and learn to let it go. If I'm worrying about after sending it across, if my what if my client doesn't like it? If they do not like your proposal, there's nothing that you can do right here about it. If they do not like it, once you get the feedback, is only when then you can make some changes and modifications, right? So then what's the point of worrying about it if in the future? So, and that might hinder you to, do other tasks which might be on your plate. That might take some time away from other things that you could possibly do during that time. So, we can try whenever these thoughts are coming, just do a small pause and check in with yourself. Is this something in my control or not? Right? And if it's in my control, I'm going to focus and do more of that. If it's not in my control, I'll let it go. A small checking that we can again try in our day to day life. So this can be done as an activity as well, where you're actually sitting it down, drawing a circle. You can think of one task that is actually stressing you out and that is causing a lot of feelings of overwhelm for you. You can put all the things about that task which is in your control inside the circle. Anything which is outside your control, you can put it outside the circle. So this is one way to do the task. Other way, as I was just mentioning, if in your day-to-day life you don't have the time to actually sit with a paper, draw it, do it, you can mentally do it in your mind as well. It's okay. About this task, what's there in my control? Which might take again another minute or two for you to do it. So there are two ways which you can do. Maybe sometimes at the end of the week you are sitting with it, you can actually put it on paper and do it. Right? And the very last part of this is mindfulness, because we are always running around and doing so many tasks, we are rushing into things, we are not taking breaks enough. We are always running and okay, what is going to happen, we are always hustling about it, and that tends to make us feel overwhelmed even further. That tends to reduce our capacity to cope with things. It reduces our capacity. So through mindfulness, by being more present in here and now, by taking those conscious effort, we can also try to reduce our stress a little. Right? One way, of course, there are we have for mindfulness, you always think, oh, I have to sit down, I have to do 20 minutes of mindfulness meditation. I don't have time for that. While those activities are always helpful, no denying that, doing visualization, engaging into mindfulness, through meditations, these are smaller tasks that you it's an indication that you can practice mindfulness in your day-to-day life as well. So sometimes, as you're just taking your bath, you are taking any which ways you're doing the task, but instead of doing that in an autopilot mode, you're actually, being here and now. How is the temperature of the water feeling to me? How is my cloud, what is the smell of the soap? How is the texture feeling? All of these are small, small things that you can try to practice the things that you're already doing, but doing it more mindfully. Cooking, taking your dog out for a walk, taking a small walk around, even when you're chatting with your friends, when you're taking small deep breaths. All of these are small small ways in which we are practicing mindfulness in our day-to-day life, right? But last but not the least, all of these things that we did mention was, okay, when I'm feeling stressed, what to do. But it's not always about the later part. There are certain times that we have to engage into managing our stress also from a preventive lens. So for example, managing our lifestyle better, making sure of our sleep, our food, our exercising, our health, as we are mentioning here, taking care of ourselves. A lot of these together also helps us to prevent that stage of stress. That is, we are already, when we are doing this well, we are also broadening our capacity of how I can deal with stress and how much stress can I deal with. Right? So these are just few techniques that we have, that it's not just about the releasing of the stress, but also about the prevention of the stress as well. Right? Any questions that you all have for me before we wind up for today? Right? And these are just small checklists that I've created for you all. If you want to take care of yourself, what are some few things that you can do? There's a small checklist that I'm going to keep it here for your view as well. So with this, we come to a sort of end of today's presentation.
Manvender, you will be able to see this session on the portal. So this is going to be readily available for you.
Okay.
That's a good one, Shraddha. Listen to music.
Yeah, it's a checklist. Yeah.
Hmm.
You can keep on seeing from here if anything that you can do in your day-to-day life to manage stress a little better. And with this, I would like to come to a close to today's session from my end, but I'm keeping it open for you all to share from the checklist what is it something you would like to do. At the same time, also opening it open for any questions that you might have for me that you'd want me to answer. Exercise, yes. Go for a walk, yeah. Having a good time with friends, yeah. Spend time with nature, yes.
Everybody, you can raise your hand. We can unmute you in case you want to ask any question.
Yes, Suraj, if you want to unmute, we can do that as well.
Kiran, can we unmute Suraj?
Yeah, traveling, listening to music.
Suraj, you can talk. You can unmute yourself and talk.
Okay.
Hello,
Yes,
am I audible, ma'am?
you're audible. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. I want to ask you, can I speak in Hindi also?
Sure, sure. I'm comfortable with that.
थैंक यू। मैम मैं ये पूछना चाहता हूँ, जैसे स्ट्रेस में जो हमारा बॉडी है
हाँ,
वो एक तरह से स्लो काम करता है, या फिर कह लो कि थोड़ा शोल्डर डाउन हो जाता है। तो एक तरह से कुछ हार्मोन्स वगैरह होते हैं जो रिलीज होता है, हमारी पूरी बॉडी को एक तरह से थका हुआ फील कराता है।
हाँ।
तो उसको बूस्ट करने के लिए कोई एक्सरसाइज या कुछ ऐसा है जो आप बता सकें?
राइट। सो आई थिंक हम जो हार्मोन की बात करते हैं, जब भी हम स्ट्रेस रहते हैं, कॉर्टिसोल एक हार्मोन होता है हमारे बॉडी में जो रिलीज होता है, एंड एज अ रिजल्ट वो हार्मोन की वजह से भी हम काफी वी फील वेरी टायर्ड, हमें थकान सा फील होता है। उसके वजह से कभी कभी जो हम अभी साइंस डिस्कस कर रहे थे, थोड़े बहुत वो भी हम एक्सपीरियंस होते हैं। व्हाट हेल्प्स अस आउट टू रिलीज कॉर्टिसोल को हमारे बैलेंस करने के लिए, एक्सरसाइज इज वन ऑफ द बेस्ट वे दैट वी सजेस्ट। तो engaging into any form of physical activity, either it could be आप जिम जाओ, आप एक्सरसाइज करो, योगा you can do it, you can also try meditation, you can try being with nature. uh, a lot of these helps us to bring our cortisol balance में, right? So I think going for a run, giving yourself some break, taking mindful breathing.
मैम
हाँ,
अगर मान लो हम काम करते वक्त ये चीज फील कर रहे हैं, देन
so there are two ways.
इमीडिएट कुछ
Immediately helps अगर आप आप for a minute you can just step outside, आप काम करते करते आपको वो फील हो रहा है too much stress, you can just step outside, अगर आप cabin या फिर आप रूम में हो, just take a walk around. You can do some breathing activity जो हम डिस्कस कर रहे थे। There is one breathing activity, बहुत सारे अलग अलग टाइप्स ऑफ ब्रीदिंग एक्टिविटीज होती है, आप वो ट्राई कर सकते हो। समटाइम्स जस्ट टेकिंग अ ब्रेक, मतलब टी ब्रेक्स कैन ऑल्सो हेल्प यू आउट, लिसनिंग टू सम म्यूजिक, दीज आर वेरी शॉर्ट टर्म थिंग्स जो आपको इन तभी के तभी हेल्प कर सकता है, बट इट्स नॉट रिस्ट्रिक्टेड। अगर मुझे अभी स्ट्रेस फील हो रहा है, जो हम स्टेजेस में डिस्कस कर रहे थे, कि इट्स नॉट रिस्ट्रिक्टेड कि मेरे को अचानक से अभी स्ट्रेस फील हो रहा है, वो हमेशा एक बिल्डअप होता है। तो while I can deal with my stress here and now, I also have to deal with stress over the period of time, कि धीरे धीरे मैं मेरे स्ट्रेस का टॉलरेंस कैसे बढ़ाऊं। तो जो भी हम अभी टेक्निक्स डिस्कस कर रहे थे, टाइम मैनेजमेंट, हमारी थिंकिंग चेंज करना, वो discussing it with maybe a manager, supervisor, boundaries set करना, connecting with your peer, all of these are broader things that आप कर सकते हो जो over time आपको stress manage करने में help करे. And of course the things जो आप अभी भी screen पे देख सकते हो, इसमें से भी अगर आप pick and choose करो and you do it in your day to day life, that helps you to manage with your stress a little. Yeah?
Riddhi, there's another question from Karambir. He says, in corporate culture, please suggest the way to deal with colleagues where the competition is very high.
I think I completely understand where you're coming from. There's always a competition where I feel that I want to, rush up the ladder, and I feel I want to agree to that. It's also important to know that how are we getting lost in the process? That we are always, worrying about climbing the next. That is, I'm worrying about the future. I'm so much involved in that future that I'm present and not able to focus. Or of the things that I've already achieved so far. While the competition can always be helpful, which might be growth oriented हो सकता है. It's allowing me to push myself a little better, to open my mind. You also have to check in, take a pause to see so far what I've achieved, how my growth has already been so far. That can also be a good space for us to be connecting to the present as well. Karavit, does that answer your question?
I'm here, I'm here for this. Flexible लेता है. मैं हूँ ना तेरे
Balwant, are you sharing something?
Hello, I'm audible.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, I just asking to you. Sometimes I'm very angry. Suddenly, like I feel I can't control my anger. So
Mhm.
if someone lied to me, okay, I know the truth, and after that, I feel this. I am facing these kinds of problem many times. So I can't control myself for that because someone lying to me.
Right.
So what should I do? Like, how can I control? So sometimes it's a big mistake. Yeah, it's happened bad with me because my word also out of mind.
Mhm. I think what I'm collecting from your question is that there are times where you feel really angry और वो outburst हो जाता है. So what do you do in that situation? I think, yeah. So all of us would does experience anger. We can't say I'm not supposed to feel angry. There are times हम वो anger का intensity high experience करें because we are under the stress. What we have to do is be mindful. It's not कि मैं anger feel नहीं करूँ, I don't feel angry. But what we can do is कि when I'm feeling angry, how am I expressing those anger? That is what हमें focus करना है. So my anger, if I'm feeling that I'm too angry in that situation, take a pause. I think the pause technique works best with anger. That whatever you have to say, whatever you have to respond, do it after that pause. Because if without pause हम वो चीज करते, we go into the reaction stage. हमने react कर लिया, then I'll be feeling guilty and regretful कि oh I shouldn't have done this. So what we do is we use the pause technique. I take a pause. I mentally or physically distance myself from the situation. Once I'm cooled down enough through the techniques that we've been discussing, as you can see, there are a few here as well, counting to 10, drinking some water, eating some snacks, going for a walk, breathing slowly. Few things that you can do while you're distancing yourself, listening to music, calling someone. And after that, maybe you can respond to the situation once you feel a little better, once you feel a little regulated, and then respond. So that helps much with the anger part of it.
Yeah, one more question.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like happen every time. If it's like I trust someone, so if she lie to me, so that time my temperature is so high. I that time I can't control that. Otherwise, I control myself and I'm cool person, not this kinds of person. But only few times it's happen if I trust someone and she lie to me and she something it's happened. That time I angry and feel angry. Yeah, these kinds of thing happened to me many times. So I try many times, but it's not successful yet.
So you to understand that, anger is one emotion which comes out very strongly. And I think जैसा आप बता रहे थे कि it just comes out when, someone is very close to you, which is also an indication that aside from anger, also something that I'm experiencing. It could be of I'm feeling betrayed, I am feeling hurt. So more we acknowledge those emotions as well, that becomes really helpful for us to deal. Because if I'm focusing only on the anger, that's not helping because there are other emotions also that I'm feeling. So acknowledging and other underlying emotions while we are working through anger can be helpful.
Okay, guys, we are taking the last question since we are at 4 o'clock. Karamvi writes, Riddhi, what can we do when someone is poking us for angry? It is one or the another reason for going into stress.
Right. I think this is a little specific question, so I will try to. May not be in a position to answer that in a very specific manner, but I'll just take certain general view from here and share it across. Um, as we were discussing, if someone is poking me, and I'm going to connect it to the strategy that we were discussing, was about the circle of control. I may not have the control of what other person is doing. Their actions, their reactions, their behaviors may not be in my control. But what is in my control would be how I'm responding to that. So am I taking that personally? What am I, bringing out of that? How am I responding to someone poking me is in my control. How I feel when someone is poking me is in my control. What I think when someone is poking me would be in my control. So just doing these small check-ins as well, trying to focus on what can I do about this situation rather than, oh, when they're doing, what do I do? What they're doing, it's not in my control, so let it go. What would be in your control, you can try to focus on that bit. Right? I hope that answers your question.
I think, Riddhi, that was very helpful. Absolutely, we can't control what others are doing. We can control how we react to it. Thank you so much, Riddhi, for leading this session. This was very informative. It was informative. It was engaging, and I'm sure it's added value to everybody who was present here. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, so much for coming on this session today. Was very exciting to have all of you here today. And we will send you feedback links. You can click onto that and you can share your feedback with us so that we are also motivated to keep organizing these kinds of sessions. We'll bring more topics and we'll get back to you very soon about this. All right. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, Riddhi.
Thank you.